Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Anewgo of New Home Sales. I'm your host, Anya Chrysanthemum, and joining me today is Ed Carey, who is a CEO of Audience Town. So welcome to the show, Ed. I'm really excited about our conversation today.
Me too, Anya. I really liked our discussion at Jeff Shore and looking forward to talking with you again today about all kinds of things.
Yeah, so why don't we do a quick introduction to our audience so that they get to know you as well as Audience Town. So give us your life story. Tell us, how did you end up where you are now?
Always a fun question to answer. I started Audience Town about 7 years ago, and the revelation I had was that a lot of the big industries like telco and automotive and travel and retail had really sophisticated consumer data and profiling platforms to help them know who their customer was and then target them and then measure all of their sales and marketing activities. Very sophisticated. And they were spending a lot of money on just trying to understand who their customer was. The story goes that my wife became a real estate agent many years ago before we had all of our kids. And she was working for one of the big brokerages, and they were trying to understand their customers better. They didn't have any data about consumers. They didn't really understand moving patterns or habits. And there was a real aha moment for me to try to build a platform for residential real estate that would really try to help them understand consumer behavior, intent, profiling better, just like the other industries. And when I started researching it, I found out there really wasn't anything for residential real estate like at all that was anywhere near what was happening on Madison Avenue and in Detroit and for all of the sort of big brands that we know about. I was like, hey, real estate could really need something like this. And I found it fascinating that more technology and data companies were not building something for real estate. So that was also an interesting moment for me. And I began to realize, talking with people and interviewing a lot of people in real estate, that it was hard to build platforms and products for the real estate sector. It's a huge industry across multifamily and new home construction and existing. And so it intimidates a lot of founders. It intimidates a lot of technology people because there's no sort of one way to do it. So I thought that was an opportunity. So started putting together the team and the product and the thesis of the company. This is now really eight years ago when Audience Town was just getting started. And we found out right away that the big US production home builders were the ones most interested in having tools and technology like this. And they were the ones best organized at the enterprise level to take advantage of things. And they were the ones who were already trying to experiment with consumer identity and technology for sales and marketing. So we focused a lot of our energies on early days on the big home builders. And all these years later, here we are. Now we're known as a sales and marketing platform, analytics platform for home builders. We specialize in knowing as much as we can about consumers. We believe that when you understand consumers using data, you can make the best decisions possible and you can have better outcomes from your sales and marketing efforts. So here we are. That's the origin story. And it's been certainly been a fun ride and a very interesting time to be building a company. As Anya, I think all of you at Anewgo know, between COVID and economic changes and political tumult and just consumer confidence, it's been a wild 7 years to be building a company. You stay committed to your vision and work hard and add value, and you can make it.
Absolutely. So I so agree with you, Ed. I think our industry almost has been flying blind in a sense. And we share some of the mutual clients, for example, like Mel Servin with Lombardo Homes is a
Oh
great
yeah.
example where they're now starting to utilize more data and they're looking for more data in order to make better decisions versus going with your gut decision. And so the two components of having great data is who, which is what you guys are trying to solve, right? Who is this customer? Who's looking at it? And what? What being, what are they actually looking at? What products are they interested in? What works for them? And so when you combine the who and the what, it gives you a really great picture for what's actually going on in your business, who's buying your products, which products are actually popular, so that you as a builder can make a lot better decisions with that. So, starting with who, since you guys are solving the problem of who, can you give us a little bit more information on how deep can you get down with who? Like what information are you actually providing to home builders?
Yeah, good question. It's a question we always get asked. First, a little bit about our platform. So we've built a really massive consumer plus property database, which includes 280 million US consumers, 121 million households, and anywhere between 20 and 30 million people at any given time moving primary homes. And that could be looking to buy a new home, people in market for an existing home. Oftentimes they're looking at both at the same time. It also includes renters because renters become home buyers. We built something, it's called the Wengine. It's the When Are They Moving engine. It's our core IP. It's got about 100 data sources. And the thesis behind our Wengine is that to know who's moving and to know as much about them, you have to know everybody in the United States. So you have to have an enormous data set of all US consumers and households to really be able to find the needles in the haystacks. And then when you detect those patterns through online and offline behaviors, it all goes into the Wengine. And then behind the scenes, we are, in technical terms, we're really an identity business. And so we understand people's identity down to the person level and also the household they live in when they live with other people. And then from there, you can start to apply technical things like machine learning and various AI to the data to understand when people are looking to move, what they're looking to move into, or what they're looking to buy, who they are, certainly, and how to understand their needs so that your sales and marketing can fit their needs better. So, yes, it starts with, hey, who are they? And you have to take all 280 million US adults and then figure out from there who are they. And when you can identify who they are, you can be more personalized in your sales and marketing. Your outreach is more ultimately relevant to them. Your website is more relevant and more targeted. For example, if you have a 55 plus community, you want your website to look that way. If you are attracting first time home buyers, you want your website to look that way. These are things our shared customer knows. So that's all of it, but it's extremely eye-opening and revealing to our customers, just like probably your customers, when they actually see the data about who their prospects really are, what channels actually identify those prospects, and what actually helps to convert leads and sell homes. It's very eye-opening, and those that get it, like Mel, are like, wow, it is like the skies open up. You get clarity. You're not just basing all of your sales and marketing decisions on what you did last year or what worked 10 years ago, according to your CEO. You're making data-driven decisions. And sometimes those decisions will reinforce what you thought, and other times they will debunk what you thought. And I find, and maybe you do too at Anewgo, that it's very cultural within the home builder. Does the home builder value data? Can they look at data? Can they look at a UI? Can they look at an analytics screen, see information, and will they believe it? And do they want to act on it? And I find the home builders that do are the most innovative in the space, and they're really willing to challenge assumptions in their own gut about what works to sell and market homes. And so I find those types are our customers. They're probably your customers too, hence a lot of the shared customer set.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Our customers tend to be definitely future driven, right? Like they are analytical, they value that information. And so we tend to attract more progressive home builders to us. It makes sense. So, Ed, question for you. I imagine that this When engine, does it sit on your website? And so when the customer comes into your website, is it identifying who this individual is? Is it aggregate across, okay, most of your customers are X, Y, and Z? Or is it really getting nitty gritty to, oh, Anya Chrysanthemum is coming from State College, Pennsylvania, and she has a credit score of whatever? And like, how deep does it get?
Yes, it's very deep. So I mentioned that Wenjin identifies 280 million US adults, 120 million households, and there's about 30 million people in some state of real estate interest or intent. Each one of those people also has about 4,000 attributes associated with them. So that's how granular, 4,000. Our lives are lived online, and everything we do is digital these days. And we leave basically a huge breadcrumb trail of activity online every time we buy a house, rent a home, purchase, or use a credit card. And so a lot of those signals are aggregated, anonymized. And then if let's say a home mover comes to a builder's website, let's say they go to Lombardo Homes and they're shopping for a community called Shady Groves. I made that up, but that's probably a community
Sounds
somewhere.
like them.
Shady Groves. And what a home builder might see is just maybe something from, maybe it comes in from Google as, hey, here's somebody shopping for this community. Maybe then they can look at Anewgo and say, hey, they're really shopping for the red houses with 3 bedrooms and the granite countertops. Our data will say that person who you don't know, they're just an anonymous visitor, is actually a family of 5, 3 kids, drives a Honda, makes this income, has this credit score, all the way down to educational level, ethnicity, and then intent to move. So we also assign them a sort of a probability score based on their sort of behaviors. And so the way it works is we have the granular identity of all of these people, and we can share many of those attributes about people with our customers, but not all. We can't just legally say this anonymous visitor to Shady Groves is Anya. We can say this is a person and she has this many kids in this household and has these interests. And she's probably interested from this data in some kind of a family community for children within access of a commutable workplace. So it gets very granular. And then there are consumer privacy laws that dictates how much we can share or not share without violating people's consumer privacy. So very granular. So what do people do with it? They take a look at those things. Most home builders will use this sort of consumer intelligence to make decisions about where to sell and market a community. For example, if something's available in South Carolina, we can identify if people are moving from Ohio to buy that. So they might want to target more in Ohio. They'll understand oftentimes that the original location or the community product, while intended for first-time home buyers, winds up being more interested for downsizers. And they'll look at that and they'll say, oh my gosh, the traffic to my community websites is actually much older than I thought. We should change the images from young families to downsizers. And then my favorite one is, well, we understand pet ownership, and pet ownership is very important. We have a home builder. One of our most fun case study is they realized that about 60% of the traffic to their community website owned 1 or 2 dogs, 60 pounds or bigger. And the optional dog shower was not being promoted at all. Like it was an option in the homes. And they're like, oh my gosh, look at all these dog owners. They put it right on the homepage. And it was like a dog in a shower. And they sold out. I think they were like, it was a distressed community. And they wound up selling everything within 6 weeks. So that's like the power of data. And I think your products are probably similar in that way. It teaches you something you didn't know. And then it helps you make decisions about how to sell and market better.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't even know how people used to sell back in the day, right? Is literally taking a dart and just throwing it or spaghetti at the wall,
Totally.
seeing what sticks. But with this, if you are speaking their language, you're talking about what matters to them, marketing becomes so much easier. And same goes with sales. If you know who's coming into your community, you can prepare your spiel to appeal to them and talk about things that actually matter to them. And so I'm curious if we can get into a little bit of trends, what's happening right now in US. I know it's a kind of a vague question, but do you see information on, say, credit scores? Are they going up, going down in general with buyers? Who's buying? Is it the millennials are still buying? Like, who's that buyer typically? I know, of course, it's different per community, but if we can talk a little bit about some of the generics.
Yeah. The Audience Town has, at this point, maybe about 3,000 new home communities on the platform. So we've got aggregated data from 3,000 communities and across the country, as it's different by region and price point and all that. But the general trends in our data that you can find in our platform are actually do mirror a lot of what I will also see in headlines or from other people's data. And to state a few of them here that we've seen in the data is the one is that demand is still pretty high. You'll hear the Zillow CEO say that people do want to move, like they would like to be able to, like between traffic, between interest. And one way we can see that evidence of demand is like a home community, Shady Groves, right? We'll see that one person will actually look at that community website maybe 20 times a month for 3 months without ever filling out a form. Just incredible amounts of voyeurism happening. And that to us is an indication across the platform of demand. People would love to be able to buy a home in Shady Groves, but they're uncertain about the direction of the economy or their job. And so what winds up happening is that it is manifest by how long the home journey becomes in an uncertain consumer economy, which means when the economy is more certain, and I'm not saying we have a bad economy or a good economy, but when it's just that kind of uncertain, people will shop for a home for over 300 days. And because we actually see the households and all the people, we can tell when an anonymous person shows up at Shady Groves in January and when they eventually fill out a form, talk to an agent, and then buy a house. And so we see the whole trace, and it just gets longer and longer. So that's an interesting data point. And this was something we talked about at Jeff Shore because it's, hey, if you're a marketer or you're in home builder sales, like and this person is coming to the website or they fill out a form, they might not buy a house from you for 6 months, but they will still buy that house or they would like to. And so stick with it, be persistent, follow up. This is not a 3 month journey for these people. And it's not even like a 200-day journey like it would be in a more certain economy. It's like a 300-day journey. So basically, the consumer confidence adds 100 days or 3 or 4 months to this sort of decision cycle. So that's like a very notable thing for people to keep in mind is that people on the community on Shady Groves in January might not buy the house until next January. But don't give up. Like they want to buy the house. Stick with it, figure out what you can do, engage them with relevance or engage them with a product with dog showers and the right sort of spec. So that's a really interesting thing. So lots of demand, just takes longer. I do think the other issue that a lot of home builders are trying to sort through is a lot of people do want to maybe buy their houses or their communities, but maybe they can't afford them anymore. And sorting through that becomes important because there might be demand out there, but maybe they show up and they don't have enough income because they're first time home buyers. They just got married, major life event. Life events drive the housing market right now. And I think Zonda put out a stat. I saw it. Jeff Shore was really good. It was like, hey, they identified like 1.7 million life eventers like buying right now. We're all tracking life events. We do as well. You know, what's interesting though is that they show up and they're like, I love Shady Groves. I want to get a house and it's 650 grand. And their budget is 520 grand or even less than that. Maybe they're first time home buyers and they're like, my budget is 350. That should be plenty to get a house. Not plenty anymore. And so if you're a home builder, sales or marketer, and you get a lead, how do you know that lead can afford that home when affordability is so hard right now? So I think you can use analytics and data to look at all your traffic and say, hey, we got 10,000 people to Shady Groves. Only 2,000 probably could buy this at all. How do you know the difference and how do you weed through good leads and qualified leads versus looky-loos or just people not really ready to be able to afford your product?
Yeah, so I agree with you. One of the challenges for salespeople is, again, because we have been blind typically to who the customer is, even when they're standing in front of us, right? Like I remember my days selling new construction and you're running around on a busy Saturday and you have family after family coming in and they're all talking to you. But again, you meet them as a person. You don't have this screen behind them pop up that's saying, oh, this person is actually qualified. This person is not qualified. This person is in the middle. So we tend to chase after like all those people, right? And maybe not giving attention to the one who's actually right in front of us and maybe not asking as many questions, but that is the buyer. So that alone helps you identify, okay, who do I need to spend my time in front of? Anewgo is trying to do the same thing with our products. Who's looking at your products? What are they looking at? Are they serious? Are they saving your products? Are they favoring things or they're just like looky-loos across different
Yeah.
communities? And then tackling the message of affordability or who is that client or that they are the dog owner. So that helps you really narrow down, really focus right on that customer and appeal to them, at least speak their language. So they're more likely to hear and receive your message. And then I would think about what can you really do to build that consumer confidence. Again, we just came back from Jeff Shore, as you said, and we've been hearing that same message over and over is that consumer confidence right now is seems to be at an all-time low.
Yeah.
You're saying 300 days for somebody to make a decision. So, what can you do to build consumer confidence? If you think about buying a home, it's just such an overwhelming experience to begin with, but building new construction is even more so because, again, most people can't visualize it, right? They don't know what the final product is going to look like. So I would really concentrate on what can you do to paint a picture, give them all the information that they need, get into the details so that there's no doubt in their mind, right? We say when we hear things, we don't trust it. You need to show us things. So show them exactly what they're looking at to help build that confidence. The more you show them, the more transparent you are with your information, the better off you're going to be. And especially now, we see that if you're putting stuff behind gated content, people are probably not going to be taking that extra step to reach out to you and look for that content. So I always tell our builders, be as transparent as possible with your information, and that will help you build confidence with your buyers.
Yeah.
As far as buyer demographic goes, so you're saying people are taking longer to make a decision, makes sense. They still want to buy. Maybe they can't quite afford the homes, which makes sense because housing affordability has been a huge issue for a while now. So who is buying homes? Can you narrow it down? Is it the Xers? Is it the millennials? Are Gen Z starting to get into the picture? Do you see any patterns there?
Yeah, I'll share a surprising pattern in how data can inform, but also not tell the whole story. And that is, for example, now customers of Audience Town can understand the income ranges of everybody coming to their community websites or even in their CRM. And you might look at some of these. Another call out in a lot of our customer support calls we've heard is some of these incomes do look low, however, and they look young. We don't know if they're qualified to afford these homes. But further data shows that they're actually filling out forms and looking at our CRM and then matching it with some of the Audience Town data, they actually are serious buyers and they've purchased homes. So what you're looking at are parents buying houses for their kids.
Mm.
And that doesn't always come through on the data. And so it's a good example of where you have to be able to interpret data, trust the data to say, hey, the data is right. These people are young and their incomes might be under $100,000 and our homes are $600,000. What's happening, but they are filling out forms. They are going on site. They're making appointments. And then the sales team this is a real lead. So what's happening? So what's starting to happen is that. And then what happens is the people on the ground in the sales office are saying, hey, these people are qualified. It looks like they're getting some down payment help from their Gen X so I'm Gen X. What's above me?
Boomers. Is that the boomers?
Boomers. So yes,
Yes.
thank you. Boomers. It's really the boomers. I'm not, my kids
Not
are
anywhere
little.
close.
Yeah, I'm not buying my kids a house, but they're getting help from that. And so that's an interesting example of one that we have seen a lot of our customer support calls. A lot of times we get on with builders, they'll say, this data looks wrong. And we say, keep looking, pattern match it, maybe something else is going on here. So that is a clue. So oftentimes it can look misleading, but we've seen enough of it to be able to guide our customers to be like, look, these people might be getting help. And that's now something that's a very qualified buyer when mom and dad have 150 grand to put down. So that's another interesting trend that we've been calling out. And it works. Another thing you can look at is mortgage applications. So has this person like qualified for mortgages? And we look at mortgage data as an indicator of probability or likelihood. So we'll actually we have flags that understand when people have applied or are already approved for a mortgage. Think of someone like Mel, who now compared to her colleague from 10 years ago, someone like Mel Servin at Lombardo, between using Anewgo and Audience Town, when someone comes to her website, fills out a form or not, she can already get a sense of, hey, how real is this? And then when it becomes a lead, she can identify, hey, this person is probably interested. This is the kind of house they want. These are the amenities of the home. And by the time that person shows up or talks live, like her sales team is getting a very qualified lead from her. They know what the buyer wants, and they can really piece apart the actual buyers from just the people who maybe are interested but can't afford it. And I think that's the short-term answer is that's what you do. There are not as many people able to buy the homes for sale right now, but you can know the real ones. We're tracking at any given time. About 2 million people across the country are in market or interested for a newly constructed home. So there's about 2 million and it goes up month to month, but you can know who they are. And that's what you do when things get a little tighter. You really try to identify and qualify who's really interested, what do they want, what are they interested in from the product, and how do we use all of that information to try to make a sale without just spending more money on sales and marketing, which winds up happening in down markets. We have a lot of customers, like many of them, they actually just wind up buying a lot more ads because they're just like more leads. Things are softening, spend more money. And you don't have to do that. That's the old way is we're not getting as many leads, buy more ads to try to get more leads. The new way is spend less and but spend it better or spend the same but spend it towards what will work. And I think that's my general advice or advice based on the fact that I know we have a lot of customers doing that and they're not spending more money in a down market. They're spending the same or they're spending a little bit less and they're just spending it better and waiting for things hopefully to improve in the form of better rates.
Absolutely. So yeah, guys, don't dismiss those younger millennials who maybe don't look so great on paper. And I think another thing that is working for them is there's going to be a huge generational wealth transfer coming shortly to those millennials from baby boomers. So as they transfer their wealth, I would assume more them will be able to actually jump in the market and buy a home. And I think with millennials, we grew up not knowing how to fix things necessarily. We're that generation that didn't spend time with dad in the garage or the dad didn't teach us. So yeah, I think new construction works really well for a lot of them. Any interesting patterns you've noticed with migration? Obviously, we know a lot of people have been moving out of California into Texas. There was a lot of migration happening with Florida. So anything different that's going on that you've noticed?
One of our tools includes migration patterns. Where do people live now who are looking at your community website? So where do they live? And then when people do, where are people moving from into an area? So, there could be a geographic area. We can tell who the home buyers are of new and existing homes and then where they're moving from. I think generally we have noticed consistent trends elsewhere, but in our data is that some of the migration or the great migration has slowed, and there's even small reverse patterns happening. For example, we were doing a demo of one of our products that has the migration data in it for a client I think it was were they in California? And the top migrating state was Texas. It was a Texas to California move, which is the reverse of everything we learned was happening in COVID. Like you just mentioned, it was assumed everybody from California moved to Texas, and they did then, but they're not as much anymore. So some of those migration patterns as a result of COVID have discontinued. However, migration patterns are still higher now that we've seen than they were even, or they are consistent. People are still migrating, but for different reasons or in different patterns because work from home is a thing, regardless of what the big companies say, and I know they're making people go back to the office. The fact of the matter is, a lot of people still have, the people who can afford homes still have an ability to work remotely or be nomadic. And so the more affordable markets in areas like of the Southeast and the Sun Belt, people are still able to relocate to those places. So we do see migration patterns. And so that is one, but the other one is true too. There are reverse migrations now happening from places like Texas out back to the Northeast, which is interesting. So it was all out of the Northeast. And then I heard a really good phrase from a customer in the Southeast. I can't remember it, but it was people during COVID had moved to Florida, where I lived. I did relocate, and now they're moving out of Florida to the southern states, like the Carolinas. So
Mhm.
there's now this like next level or next phase of migration happening from your COVID migration somewhere else because places like Florida are now priced out. And so
Right.
people are going to places like the Carolinas and they're finding wonderful quality of life and affordability and ability to build and sell new homes there too. So those are the interesting patterns. It's hard to really try to read the tea leaves too much. Other than that, oftentimes it is surprising, and some of the migration patterns of COVID have since rerouted a bit.
For sure. Any information on international? I know that we see some surprising international buyers coming in, especially, for example, for Mel, one of her communities is in the Detroit area. And so we see people in Germany looking at the communities there, which you're like, why are they looking? But it makes sense that it's automobile makers, right? Like maybe they're relocating people, whatnot. So people actually from Germany shopping there. And I've heard that definitely we seem to be still a very attractive investment in US for international buyers. So any ability to expand internationally, or is that something you guys are looking at? I can imagine that data set is a whole other story and a whole other
It is a whole
adventure.
other story. We don't identify or track when people are overseas, mostly because of data laws. The data that we have access to about consumer patterns and behaviors is really unique to the US in a lot of ways, and it's very hard to, or almost impossible to understand some of these same data attributes from people in other countries. I'll only say just anecdotally, I know that there are a few companies who we meet at conferences who are now starting to bring this data to the market. And we do have customers who think it's really interesting. And they're starting to say, especially in places like California and Florida and New York and maybe the big metros, like why it is a bit of a blind spot. It's, hey, we are selling things. And oftentimes people might come from countries you wouldn't always expect. It's like the UK, these high tax countries, and also China. And
Yeah.
it's like they're selling a lot of homes, especially new community homes, and then they might bring their families over and things like that. And I've heard anecdotally it's definitely an opportunity for the home builders, and they're starting to look at it more closely. And I think there's a couple of good platforms that offer that kind of service. I have also heard though that things have changed a little bit with the current administration and some of the policies, and that has changed. But I know in certain markets it does prop up the real estate market, like in California, where it was like they were having net migration exodus. But it started to stabilize again. It was mostly because of international buyers. Some of those markets do get supported by those people.
Yeah. So speaking of things that you're looking at in the future, are there any new features or anything that you're working to enhance your platform that you can share with us?
Yeah, sure. We have a lot of customers on the platform. They're always giving us feedback. The things that we're working on for this year and next year that are most interesting is one, a lot of our customers say there's a step process with consumer information or analytics or data is one, tell me who it is. Two is tell me what to do with it. Now, what do I do? Once I know who my buyer is, how can you help me act? And so we've had a lot of customers ask us to be able to, once they identify who their customer is, maybe it's the dog lover, help us find those people on Meta. Is there any way we can export and move this consumer data around into other platforms so we can really use it out in the world? So we're trying to figure out ways to unlock some of our consumer data for customers and partners in new ways. And then three, help us measure. Now that I've acted on it, can you help me understand if a lead is where it came from and if it's qualified? And do I really know where this lead came from? A lot of home builders, they'll give their website first attribution, like, and if it came through my website, I'll attribute my website to the success of this lead or the sale. And that is certainly a contributing factor. But oftentimes these leads are seeing ads, they're on search engines, they're on AI, they're on, of course, the portals, they're seeing emails, they're doing a lot of things before they become a website lead. So we try to help them identify that. And then longer term, the one thing we get asked a lot from our clients, and oftentimes it's like our clients, executives will say, where should I build? And can you tell me about these consumer patterns and migration patterns in ways that can help me decide a little bit more of a longer term strategy, not just, hey, help me target better to get more leads right now. We all need that help. But hey, almost like your questions, Anya, like where are people moving to? Where are they moving from? When they move from Tennessee to Detroit, why? And is there anything you can tell me about people moving around the country that could maybe help us make land or product decisions? So we're trying to think about ways to also unlock this data and make it usable for all kinds of use cases, sales, marketing, but also just even what kind of products do people have the most interest in? And maybe all home builders should have dog showers, for example. They want to know those things. So we're trying to take the data and apply more AI to it to be able to understand more predictively what's happening in the country vis-a-vis the economy and what they want from their home.
For sure. Can't go wrong with dog showers. So that's
That doesn't, I tell you what, it seems like most people have dogs. It's consistent across a lot of our data. Like dogs, and I think, and I've read information that's yeah, dog, like just the pet industry has gotten so big. Pets are family. You mentioned you have some huskies in the background, or they're like it seems to be just they're a big part of the family. And what is interesting about pets is I've also learned that for younger people who might not have kids yet, but they do have pets, dog ownership is a life event.
Oh
It's like
yeah.
very interesting. Now, Anya, you have dogs, you have kids. If you got another dog, you wouldn't move, but a lot of people would.
Right.
And it is a life event for people in their 20s. Maybe they're newly married or they're coupled up and they might decide to get a dog. And when they do, they're like, we need to get a house. We need to move. This dog needs a yard and we're going to move because of the dog. So that's real and we hear it pretty consistently. So yeah, pets are it's a big consumer attribute for us and our clients.
100%. Ed, as we wrap up today's podcast, was there anything that I did not ask you that you think is important for our listeners to understand, whether it's about your product or just in general?
Man, that is a good and tricky question. I think that maybe a question that you did not ask me is maybe just what's working for builders, but also what's not working. Like I'm always interested in the talking about like the broken stuff, which is a lot. And I think while we're sitting here talking about how technology and data adoption is happening across the home builder space, it is. We go to Jeff Shore, and there's a lot of great prop tech companies like yours and ours and others. So I do see good technology adoption happening. One thing I've been taking away from some of these conferences that I think we have to confront a little bit more is it is probably happening faster than is being acknowledged in some respects. I go to all the conferences, Anya, I see you at a lot of the conferences, and I hear people on stage talking, and a lot of the solutions to modern problems are sometimes talked about more as like service challenges when they could just be more structural than that. And so I think one thing I am, and I have to say, of course, I'm extremely biased in this regard, but I think a lot more is changing about sales and marketing and home building than is even being acknowledged at the conferences I attend. And there's a lot being talked about how to sell more homes, maybe using these old tactics when my bias is the answer to a lot of these problems is actually just better information and more scalable and efficient ways of operating. And so I would like to hear that the technology companies and the prop tech companies are getting a little bit more chance to prove themselves and that the answer to more home sales isn't always just spend more money and pick up the phone more, which is a lot of what I still hear. And I think we got to snap out of that.
I 100% agree with you. It has been my mission ever since I've joined Anewgo. Even before that, I've always loved technology and always been a huge proponent of it. And I do think a lot of builders don't quite understand the value and they don't understand how fast consumers are changing. Think about just adoption of Facebook, like how long it took them to get to the users that they have now versus ChatGPT, like how many users they got like in the same 2 months period, they were basically it's insane. So the consumers are moving at the speed of light. They are jumping into trying all those new things with AI. The way that your homes are being found online via AI is completely different experience for consumers. And if AI cannot see your information on your website because you're still using dial-up, you're going to be just left behind. So that is the reality of it. I understand that budgetary restrictions are a thing, right? Like maybe we're not in the best place for the economy right now, but the consumers are not going to be very forgiving. So I think I'm 100% with you on that, that it is going so much faster than the internet adoption, than any other technology adoption in the past. So that's something to pay attention. Make sure you are using some discretionary budget in your marketing to just play around with technology, explore new technology, and see if that's a thing. Don't do technology for the sake of technology, but definitely give it a shot, see if it's working, if it's solving a problem for you. And again, Mel was telling me how much you can see now between the product information that we provide to now who is on the website, right? Like it's a huge eye opener for her as to how they market, who they market to, and they're much more efficient with their budget. Again, when the restriction comes with the how to spend that budget, if you know exactly what to say and who to say it to, Hey, it's a no-brainer. Thank you so much for being on today's podcast. I really appreciate your time. It was so enlightening to see just how granular you guys can get with your information and how you can really help builders hone in on their messaging to attract that right client, speak their language. Thank you for being here, and I will talk to you very soon. Hopefully, I'll see you at one of the technology events coming up here in the future.
Yeah, most definitely. We're hosting an event called Play to Win on September 11. Ani, we'd love to have you there as well. It'll be a good small crowd. And we've got Skylar Olson, former chief economist at Zillow, speaking there. So it's an event that it'll be an online event. We hope people can just join in. It's really more of a workshop environment. So maybe I'll see you there. I hope you can join with us. If not, I'll certainly see you in person at one of the upcoming events where we'll be beating the drum on technology and data to do things better.
Awesome. If you wouldn't mind providing a link, I'll include it in the show notes so everybody can jump on if you guys are watching currently. Definitely don't want to miss on that. Again, thank you for being here today, and I will talk to you very soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
Anya.
Thanks.